Hello. Welcome to Civilization Jihad Awareness, the show where truth wins every time. Now, this week I have something rather unusual for you, but let's first talk about where that term comes from, the term civilization jihad. Where does it come from? It comes from the Muslim Brotherhood, and that term was created, or at least written, in 1991 in the explanatory memorandum. And it was discovered as late as 2003, and we have to thank a Maryland Transit Authority officer for just doing his job, which led to the discovery of this document. And this document, I'm just going to read one paragraph from it to let you know what the Muslim Brotherhood's plans were and still are for North America. Their thought of North America doesn't really include Mexico, but let's talk about what that is, that plan. According to this one paragraph, it says, understanding the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated, and God, which means their Allah's religion, is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? Now, wait till you hear what I've been doing. I am proposing to write a scholarly article on the process of radicalization. I totally disagree on the whole concept. However, I found something that I could somewhat agree with. And I'm going to surprise you all today, because I'm going to basically read to you a piece that I put together today. I probably will be publishing later, but I want you to know what I've been up to. So this week, as I prepared for the week's show, I read many news stories and delved into a book by Angel Rabasa and Cheryl Benard. It's called EuroJihad, Patterns in Islamist Radicalization and Terrorism in Europe, which was published in 2015. That's 3 years ago. Now, the concepts of radicalization or radical Islam are basically problematic for me, especially when those who use these terms don't define them. Or worse, they use the terminology illogically or inconsistently. Let's talk about what that looks like. A quick Google search brings up these definitions. Dictionary.com says, a person who advocates through, talking about radical, person who advocates through or completes political or social reform. How about this one? Merriam-Webster.com says, again, talking about the term radical, very different from the usual or traditional, favoring extreme changes in existing views, habits, conditions, or institutions. Again, we're talking about this extreme difference. OxfordDictionaries.com says, relating to or affect the fundamental nature of something, far-reaching or thorough, advocating or based on thorough or complete political or social change. Again, they're talking about a complete change. So what if I take the definitions above and state radical is one who is against the norm? Would that make sense? How about this? So we do that. So how about I say this? One who opposes, then let's go farther. Let's say I take somebody and I call this person a radical Christian. Now, this person's a radical Christian, and yet he holds evangelistic events. He preaches Christ. He teaches from the Bible. Would that be wrong? So what do normal Christians do? Leaders, A, hold evangelistic events? Do they preach and do they teach from the Bible? If you answer yes, then the concept of radical here would be wrong. It would be wrong to apply. So let's think about that. I mean, it would be a wrongly applied label as radical. Okay. So let's go on. I suppose, I got to say, I owe Claire Lopez some kudos for once reminding me that definitions are important. They make the speakers and the authors define what they're saying. We got to get this clarity. So Rabasa and Benard begin their book by noting the U.S. perception of the problem of Islamist extremism in Europe is primarily one of radicalization as a stage in progression towards terrorism. This is on page 1. In 2015, Obama was president. Education and training in respect to Islamic terrorism became banned in the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and I suspect also the CIA. This is the same presidency under which DHS lawyer Dr. William Bradford was fired for using the term Islamic terrorism in a highly reputed article on the rules of engagement in a journal that required peer review before publication. The article is meticulous and I believe had drastic importance for national security and probably even so to today. So in 2015, what did DHS think of radicalization? According to Faisal Patel in 2011, the U.S. government defined radicalization as the process by which American citizens and residents turn to violence, using Islam as an ideological or religious justification. Interesting. They used the term Islam. Interesting. So what did Rabasa and Benard mean by radicalization in their book Eurojihad? The answer will shock you. I guarantee you it's going to shock you. It really was a surprise for me. So they remind us that dictionaries define radicalization as the process through which individuals or groups adapt extreme ideas. That's found on page 3. So according to their use of dictionaries, the essential element in a radicalization process is the adaptation of extreme ideas. Keep that in mind. As I said, Rabasa and Benard's definition of radicalization will surprise you. They next write, what is considered radical depends on social and historical context. In some societies, there is broad acceptance of behavior that in the West is considered extreme, such as draconian punishments from deviations from religious orthodoxy, adultery, or homosexuality. Whereas what is regarded in the West as normative, for instance, gender equality, the liberalization of sexual norms, is considered socially subversive, unquote. Wait, not once did they use the term Islamic to describe these societies. Not once did they say these punishments are required by Sharia. Why is that? How can ignoring this contribute to a definition of radicalization? I have to ask these things. Well, here we have. Rabasa and Benard state their definition of radicalization is, here's ready for the surprise? If you're surprised, make sure you say something in the chat room because I tell you, or call in if you want. This one surprises me. Rabasa and Benard state their definition of radicalization is the rejection of the key dimensions of modern democratic culture that are at the center of European value system. That's found on page 3. So it follows that their definition of extremist ideas would be anti-democratic or anti-modern European culture. So Rabasa and Benard define the ideals that are European, that extremists are against, as a democracy and internationally recognized human rights, gender equality and freedom of worship, respect for diversity, acceptance of non-sectarian sources of law, opposition to violence as a means to obtain political ends. So those are the extreme ideas that they're basically what Rabasa and Benard are saying that they're against these things, and that's an extremist idea to be against the concepts of gender equality, the concepts of I'm just trying to get this all right, human rights, the concepts. Oh shoot, my computer thought it was going off. Sorry about that. The concepts of diversity, concepts of being against violence, this is just this got me. So to put this definition in action, let's change the cover of the book, the title of the book, from EuroJihad Patterns in Islamist Radicalization and Terrorism in Europe. Let's change it to EuroJihad Patterns in Islamist Anti-Europeanism and Terrorism in Europe. I'm not disagreeing with this definition. I want you to understand that. This would mean that every time they apply the word radical, they would be referring to anti-Europeanism. Every reference to extremism would be in reference to anti-European modern culture. This is problematic when viewed on an international platform. So we could say, if we did that here, we would say anti-American or anti-Canadian. Think about this. I mean, there is some logic to using this definition. So let's go back to page 2. It says, the ringleaders of this is what they wrote. The ringleaders of the Madrid train bombings, 3 of the 4 7/7 London bombers, Theo van Gogh's assassin Mohammed Boyan, and others involved in Islamist terror plots appeared on the surface to be well integrated. These individuals spoke their new home country's languages, Spanish, English, or Dutch. They were born and educated in European countries, or as in the case of the Madrid bombers, longtime residents. And some of them were economically successful and had attained middle-class status, but they still turned to violence against the societies of which they were part. This is, as they stated, the surface examination. What would allow them to act in this way? That question is never really answered in this book. What would allow them to not express their dislike of the society their family had become a part of? It was a European value to allow free and open discussion of ideas. At no time does this book state that such deception is permitted in the Quran by Muhammad and is enforced by the Sunnah. So, using their definition, these people cannot be seen as extremists, at least not on the surface. So the authors state that the phenomenon of Islamist extremism is, now get this word, disaggregated into 3 separate but related components. Number 1, the problem of integration of members of European Muslim communities into the national societies. We see this every time I read the news every week. The second one they have, the radicalization of sectors of these communities, which are the areas of Sharia zones. And then we have the third part, the recruitment of radicalized, basically anti-Europeanized. Every time we see radical, we're going to talk about anti-European. Recruitment of anti-Europeanized individuals into extremist, which would be anti-modern European culture, and terrorist groups. If we take their definition in radicalization seriously, which I think Europeans should, could have meant that there exists a phenomenon of anti-European beliefs in Islamic communities that's causing them not to integrate into European communities, that they are willingly migrating to. Hence the reason they should learn about the Islamic doctrine Hijra. That is spelled H-I-J-R-A or H-I-J-R-A-H, depending on how it's, they spell it. You can find articles on this on my blog, Paul Sutliff, that's PaulSutliff.blogspot.com. Now back to the topic. Rabasa and Benard had this chance, to nail home that these migrants are coming to Europe as economic migrants. People who seek a better economic situation, but they did not follow through. They had a chance to nail this, but they barely score the surface. I do like this book. Please understand that. I like much of what it has to say, but it seems as if the authors are either afraid to nail home their points or are merely avoiding difficult discussions. Rabasa and Benard reveal some of what makes these difficult in the gathering of Rabasa and Benard reveal some of what makes things difficult in gathering of statistical information. Now, they talk about, they go through and they're talking about percentages of populations. How much is of this particular country is Muslim? How much of that particular country is Muslim? And they're going through a lot of Europe and doing this. But they point out why that's difficult. And I haven't seen anybody really do that before. They talk about the laws in France inhibiting good data collection. For this, the author should be commended. It's a rare discussion. They try to reveal the changes in population across Europe, but they admit openly they're unable to give the true picture of how severe the changes are. Now, I witnessed some of this on my trip to Europe in the fall of 2016. What I do like about this book has to do with its attempts at documenting civilization jihad. They document not only the change in populations throughout Europe, but begin to discuss the anti-Europeanism of the Muslims who have been in Europe and those newly entering Europe. In one case, they cite a survey in Germany that shows a possible contradiction that they ignore. So here's what they cite. This is what they write. A survey of 1,011 people, again, this survey is taking place in Germany, of Turkish heritage between the ages of 15 and 29, conducted in 2012, indicated a trend toward greater religiosity, but also a greater willingness to integrate into German society. Now, this was found on page 13. Now, here's my comments. If a greater religiosity means that they are becoming more devout in their faith, and that faith expresses what they define as anti-Europeanism normally, doesn't it follow that they would also not willingly integrate into German society? At least not unless they had a subversive purpose. Why is there no discussion on whether to trust the statistics they found in respect to Islamic doctrine of taqiyya, allowing to non-Muslims to, quote, protect their faith? Rabasa and Benard devoted entire chapters to Salafism and radical Islamism. It's a really good, important chapter. This is one of the reasons why I say you need to buy this book if you're really into learning about what's happening in Europe. They correctly defined Islamism early on as political Islam. Radical, though, must be taken again to mean anti-European, according to these authors. In fact, I like their discussion of Sayyid Qutb and the other writers on jihadist beliefs, but I found that Rabasa and Benard had a somewhat flawed understanding of the term Reformation. They tried to discuss the Protestant Reformation, but really had no understanding of it. But what they got right here is one of the reasons I recommend their book. This is only the second book I have read that purports to be on national security that correctly states, here's what they said. When people in the West speak about the need for an Islamist reformation, it is worth noting that such a reformation has in fact occurred and that the results have not been favorable to the Western liberal concepts. Wow. And that's on page 28, guys. This book is good because right there, they're telling you you can't expect reform of Islam to solve the problem. So give that one up. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I've been waiting for authors to say that. The only one I've seen tell the truth on that so far, writing in this whole stream of national security, has been Stephen Coughlin. He is the only one I've seen say that. So let's go on. I'm talking about national security people. You'll find Claire Lopez and the Center for Security Policy nail that one regular. But I guess I should be stating that people who are, I guess that's not fair. Claire Lopez and the Center for Security and Stephen Coughlin's part of that are all nailing that. I have not seen that in any particularly good books, any books on national security that I've been reading. Wow. So Rabasa and Benard state there are two core elements that are common to Salafism and jihadi ideology. Listen closely. These two core elements are reasons for every country to ban Salafism and to consider it a political entity that is banned under the purpose of national security, keeping its people safe. So the two core elements. First one, purification of Islam by returning to the uncorrupted form that Salafists believe by Muhammad. This is Salafists and jihadists believe, and his companions, practiced by Muhammad and his companions, and an insistence on the unmediated authority of the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, this makes them I mean, this makes the entity truly, all they want is to say that political Islam must exist and it's the only way. So what they're saying is they are political. They have nothing to do really with religion. Let's think about this. The second point they make, Tawheed, the unity of Allah. This is the founding principle and is a belief shared by all Muslims. But Salafists especially, well, again, radical, which means anti-European. Salafists had taken this concept and given it an anti-European interpretation. For instance, as Allah alone is the source of law, no human being or legislation could alter in any way Allah's law, the Sharia, because that would mean that human beings would set themselves in the place of Allah. Therefore, is a radical, again, they mean anti-European, Salafi view, so democracy, according to Salafis and Jihadis, is a false religion. Now, I think this is a really important comment because they're calling a form of government a religion. This is a good way to understand their concept of political. There is no difference under Islam between political and religion. So we should treat them the same way. If you're going to feel that way, we're going to take away your 401c3 status as a, quote, religious institution. We're going to consider you a political institution. If you want to file under that, you can have that. Was it 403, whatever, I don't know, for their status. They need to have that status as a religious institution removed. Now, right now I'm picking only on Salafis because these are the definite ones we can knock out, and that's the only one addressed in this book. So this is, again, I think this is really important. Where Rabasa and Benard and I deviate is they make the claim that mainstream Muslims rely on the whole body of the Quran and the Sunnah and Islamic tradition, positions, whereas many Salafists, particularly the more radical sector of the movement, make selective use of the Quran to support their Islamist militant views. Now, this is what they say. Then they enter into a discussion on abrogation. I don't agree with them that they're saying mainstream Muslims rely on the whole body of the Quran. What they didn't say here is they didn't talk about abrogation, but they get right into it next. So let's talk about abrogation. They enter into discussion on abrogation. This section neglects to state that abrogation is used by all Muslims to deal with contradictions in the Quran. No place in here do they address that this is a normative thought process. To me, that's really problematic. Again, while I like the book, this to me is dangerous because you're missing the entire thing that could be. I mean, you need to understand this is a huge, huge problem, not just Salafists. And they could have nailed this home and said, look, it's everyone that's Muslim. They all hold this belief. Again, like I said, it's like they're afraid to touch things, to really nail things home. And that really got me. I get real angry when I think about this because this is they could have just nailed home. Again, I differ in my stand here because of my study of Islamic histories. And again, it's Islamic histories I'm talking about because of and what my study of what Islam calls the rightly guided caliphs. Simply reading of Sharia on the topic of abrogation reveals that it's not only an extremist view of Islam, it's a view of Islam. Abrogation is viewed by the entire mainstream. I mean, they all use abrogation. There's not one branch or section of Islam that does not use abrogation. It doesn't exist. I will say that abrogation is extremely important to jihadists. Stephen Coughlin discusses the concept of abrogation as important to understanding threat doctrine. Rabasa and Benard then go on into the Salafi and Jihadi concept of declaring Muslims who do not share their views as apostates. Missing here is a discussion on Jahiliyyah, which Coughlin nails in his book, Catastrophic Failure. I recommend, if you have that book, you have to go back and reread his section on Sayyid Qutb. Go back and read the whole piece on Jahiliyyah, because he talks about the threat doctrine, and that's the only place you'll find it. I have yet to find it in any other book on terrorism. Not one have I found this on, and this was just outstanding. Going on, Rabasa and Benard they do punch out truth by stating mainstream Salafists and Islamist groups and movements and their radical, again, which they mean anti-European fringe groups and movements, can become gateways to violent extremism. Again, that would be anti-European. So, anti-European modern culture. That's what gateways to violent anti-European culture. This is important to think about. Now, again, if we substitute for American or Canadian for their use of European, this could have far-reaching importance. So there's much in this book. So I recommend it. Do go to Amazon and get your copy of EuroJihad by Angel Rabasa and Cheryl Benard. I do recommend it. I do want to tell you about something else that has me ticked off, and I couldn't even go into it this week. I was so angry. Or last week. I wanted to. I really wanted to. I don't want to kill it too much because I believe Carl Goldberg will be covering this tomorrow morning. But there was an article out there by Florida Atlantic University professor Dr. Robert Rabil, and I'm just going to I guess I'll start what I had started to write. I started to write a piece, and I'm just going to read you that. And again, okay, I'll just start from here. I wrote, it's hard for me to get any more disgusted and angry than when I see teachers or professors lying or deceiving the public. To me, a person who does this and places the nation's security at risk is guilty of professional malfeasance, an act that is unequivocally wrong. For that, they should be removed from their post immediately. Florida Atlantic University's professor, Dr. Robert G. Rabil, wrote an article for the Washington Post published in the Opinions section on August 1st, 2018, which is historically errant and sufficiently deceptive to the general population that could lead to a major national security issue. The title of his article, The Distortion of Islam That Drives Terrorism, Americans Shouldn't Be Fooled by Radical Distortions of a Key Islamic Concept. I'm going to read you the two paragraphs that royally pissed me off. This is just the beginning, and I'll read this, and you tell me if you're angry, because I know this pisses me off. So he wrote, Professor Rabil of Florida Atlantic University, who should be disciplining him for this, wrote, and in fact, that's what I recommend. Write to Florida Atlantic University Board of Trustees and charge him with professional malfeasance after you hear what I say. You can look up his article in the Washington Post. Quote it. Quote me in my response to this if you want. I'm disgusted. I am angry that somebody should be using the title professor to tell lies to the public in the United States. If you're in communist Russia, I get it. Don't get it here in the United States. If you're in communist Soviet Union, I get it. Communist China, I get it. But here in the United States, where truth is supposed to be important, the major media is supposed to be pushing out the truth. They've given up. They're into propaganda, especially when they publish this. Again, Professor Rabil, Dr. Robert G. Rabil. He writes, Jihad is an ominous word to most Americans, conjuring up images of terrorism. But the word jihad in Arabic means to strive or to make a determined effort. The association with terrorism represents distortion of the true Quranic meaning of the term. According to an oft-repeated hadith sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, jihad is supposed to encompass both a struggle against one's sinful proclivities, known as the greater jihad, and a struggle against injustice, known as the smaller jihad. But over time, both Shia and Sunni Islam have developed distinct distortions of jihad, both of which can association we have between jihad and terrorist acts. This tie, however, advances a twisted concept with little to do with the mainstream teachings of Islam. I can't use the words because I don't cuss as a Christian. I really don't. But this person, Professor Rabil, has basically denied Islamic law, Islamic history. He's denied the first four caliphs, the rightly guided caliphs. He has denied everything but his fantasy land. This just makes me angry. He may be a Jesuit and can't be trusted, but the fact that it's in a media source is that some ignorant, pompous fool who wants propaganda would put that out to the public, knowing it's full of lies. There's no way you can't know this today. There's no way you can't be knowledgeable of this today. Reliance of the Traveler. Pick up. Go. You could read my stuff. You can read. There's so many people out there telling you the truth that Dr. Rabil can go back to his fantasy land and hopefully never teach again at Florida Atlantic University, because I fear for those students there. Here's the thing that really got me about Florida Atlantic University that has me bombastedly mad. I went to their ethics piece so I could see if professors were allowed to lie to their students. They are. Believe it or not, they are. Here's why. Because it says they are allowed to say what they believe is true. They believe is true. So if they get caught knowingly telling a lie, then they're in trouble. But if they believe the lie, then they should at least be made to apologize. Can we agree on that one? So you're not going to dismiss them. But they should apologize, huh? So let's see that public apology, Mr. Fool from Florida Atlantic University. I wouldn't send a child there with professors there who are basically allowed, according to their ethics stand, to misinform students. Disgusting. Now, I want to get into the news. And the news this week, oh my God, there's so much powerful article out there today. It came from my last week's guest, Leo Holman. And if anybody has been following the story about what happened in Georgia, wow, I'm going to put this link in the chat room before I go on. And I want everybody to get this. I want you to copy and paste it into your social media accounts. Share it with everyone. Oh, wow. This stuff is so good. This is from Leo Holman. Again, his article is called Father of Georgia Man Holding Starving Children in New Mexico is Linda Sarsour's mentor and favorite person. Suraj Wahash, 40, of Clayton County, Georgia, was arrested along with his two sisters and two other adults last Friday in New Mexico on charge of the felony child abuse for holding 11 starving children in an underground trailer hidden from view in a compound described as overflowing with weapons and ammunition. But there's more to this story that still lies hidden beneath the surface of the nightly news accounts we've all been following. Nobody's talking about Wahaj's well-connected father, Siraj Wahaj, a radical Brooklyn imam, spiritual advisor to Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders, supporter Linda Sarsour, or Linda Cockroach. That's what Sarsour means in Arabic. The elder Wahaj also has ties to the most prominent U.S. Muslim organizations, the Council on American Islamic Relations, basically Hamas in America, Islamic Society of North America, ISNA. He was an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Sarsour's co-chair of the Women's March on Washington has become the face of ISNA. She spoke at an ISNA conference in Chicago last summer in which she praised Wahaj Sr. as her favorite person and called on U.S. Muslims to wage political jihad against the Trump administration. Since that time, she has been working to elect far-left Democrats to public office, such as Abdul El-Sayed and Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York, Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, and Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Thank God that Michigan Democrat did not elect that man. Going back, Siraj Wahaj Jr., according to court documents, was training the kids to carry out school shootings. Eventually, he was running a jihad training camp. Running a jihad training camp for child terrorists. Clothed in rags, reduced to skeletons, the children were living with 5 adults at the compound in Taos County, a remote area of northern New Mexico. Police found the body of a toddler on the grounds, which they believed to be that of Abdul Ghani Wahaj, the 3-year-old son of Wahaj Jr. and grandson of Wahaj Sr., according to court documents. Wahaj Jr. also faces abduction charges for allegedly kidnapping his son from his mother's home in Georgia. While focused on the boys' military training, he neglected their basic needs while leaving them malnourished and living in horrific conditions described by police. But no one's talking about this. No one. This article goes on, and I unfortunately will not read the entire article to you. I think you should go back and you should pick this up and read it. It is outstanding. Again, the great quality of research done by Leo Holman. Wow. I have much to say about this. This is just... El-Sayed did not pass, by the way. He did not win the primary. He got a couple, I believe it was a few 100,000 ballots. And I think I have a piece on that later in here. I'll check it out later. I'll go back and pull it out later. Almost 300,000 votes. That's correct, Doc. There was a large margin of vote against him. I was told by many people in Michigan not to even consider this guy. They considered him an idiot, by many Democrats. But the fact that they would run him as a serious party candidate, I don't know. Run an anti-American as a serious gubernatorial candidate in Michigan. I have issues. Going into the news, this one comes from Gazette.com. Iraqi immigrant accused of shooting Colorado Springs cop remained in U.S. This series of crimes. This is by Tom Roeder, Jacob Rogers, and Lance Benzel. This was published August 3rd. A man accused of shooting a Colorado Springs officer in the head in shootouts early last Thursday, while free on bond, was known to immigration enforcement officials, yet evaded deportation despite a string of crimes, court records show. Why Karar al-Khamasi wasn't deported was among questions left unanswered Friday as his bond was revoked. Samduzal, the officer he is accused of shooting, remained hospitalized in critical condition. The 31-year-old Iraqi immigrant appears to have lived in Pikes Peak region for at least 5 years, and he had at least 9 contacts with police in that time, according to court records. On the day he pled guilty in 2014 to felony trespass, al-Khamasi was on an immigration hold, court records show. Whether his guilty plea should have triggered deportation depends on a variety of factors, but his conviction raises the question as to why he was allowed to remain in the United States, said David Simmons, a Denver immigration attorney of more than 30 years and a former adjunct professor at the University of Denver. Some forms of trespass are considered crimes of moral turpitude, which can lead to deportation, and others are not, Simmons said. The consequences of such a conviction also could vary, depending on how long he had been in the country, or the nature of circumstances that brought him here. Some Iraqis living in the U.S. came as refugees who assisted the government or who fled persecution. But those refugees sometimes evade deportation because of chaos in their home country or threats to their lives upon their return. It's unknown whether those things factored into al-Khamasi's immigration here, and the type of visa al-Khamasi used to enter the United States wasn't clear. El Paso's County Sheriff's, this goes on. This is a long, long article, and I have to say I agree. I think the man should not have been allowed to stay. That officer would be alive today. This is where, looking back, we need to do something. We need to deport those with felonies, and we need to deport them at a faster rate to protect those who live in our country. Next story. A week ago, I talked about Stanford, where a Muslim student who vowed to physically fight Zionists he did this publicly in social media. He was a resident advisor. Okay, if you haven't gone to a college, a resident advisor is a person who lives on a floor of a dorm and is basically responsible for an area. He gets paid to be responsible for the students, to be like a mentor to them. So, make sure that area is safe and taken care of. So this week, he resigned as RA. So Hamza, this is from Robert Spencer, August 4th. Hamza Daoud is the thuggish Muslim student at Stanford University who vowed, "I'm going to physically fight Zionists on campus next year if someone comes at me with their Israel is a democracy." He said, "Bullshit. And after I abolish your bleep, I'll go ahead and work every day for the rest of my life to abolish your petty bleep ethno-supremacist settler colonial state." If he'd been a member of the College Republicans if he had been a member of the College Republicans and said this, he was vowing to fight leftists on campus, or a Jewish student was vowing to physically fight Palestinians on campus, he would have been immediately expelled. But again, Stanford, they're all for it. And these are the campuses. People spend special amounts of money. Scary. I wouldn't send my kid to Stanford if I had a choice. No freaking way. Not after seeing the stuff that's happening. Man arrested for setting blaze at Staten Island gas station. Now you tell me if this is jihadist. A man was caught, and I'll tell you, New York Post put this article out, and I caught this, and it just kind of blew my mind. They have a video of the man setting a fire. Now, he's poured the gasoline out on the ground, and he starts the fire. Now, again, it's all on video. The man's name, Fakhrul Islam. He's 26. He was charged with arson and reckless endangerment for igniting a massive burst of flames outside a 7-Eleven at Richmond Avenue and Victory Boulevard early Monday morning. Islam could be seen on video filling a portable gas tank and intentionally spraying the gas on the floor before lighting a piece of paper with a match. A 21-year-old man nearby suffered minor injuries in the blaze. Islam was apprehended by the NYPD in upstate New York. In upstate Buffalo, New York, okay? With the assistance of the Buffalo Police Department. So he made it clear across the state. Understand that. He made it, we're talking about, it's about 600 to 800 miles, 600, 700 miles. And nobody saw him anyplace or caught him until he got to Buffalo. Wow. He was being treated in a hospital. This guy, to me, that was a jihadist action. It was a test to see, can he blow up gas stations as a jihadist? It's up to you whether you view that as a jihad or not. How about this one? Ilhan Omar fundraises with care in Southern California. Health ethics violator and Islamofascist representative Ilhan Omar apparently spent the penultimate weekend. Now, I should say where this comes from. This comes from alphanewsmn.com. And this is by John Gilmore, August 6th. House ethics violator and Islamofascist representative Ilhan Omar apparently spent the penultimate weekend before the Democratic Florida's primary for not Democratic Florida, of the District of Minnesota she claims to want to represent in Congress, but her co-religionist and terror-affiliated CARE in a 3-city fundraising tour of Southern California. Now, she was in California doing the fundraising tour, and she's trying to run in Minnesota. A Facebook posting by Hussein Aylush, Executive Director of CARE, Greater Los Angeles Chapter, August 5th, shows 3 photos of Omar in what looks like a nicely furnished private residence. He wrote, in Anaheim with future Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, CARE California PAC is hosting 3 events for the Minnesota candidate in Southern California. Again, where's she running? She's running in Minnesota, and they're doing fundraising in California? That kind of stuff has got to stop. Raising funds out of state for your candidate, I have an issue with it. I don't care who the candidate is. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. You should only be able to raise your funds within. That's important. This stuff. I have real issues with some of these concepts, and some are basic. It's just things to think about. How about this one? Memory.org. Memory, Middle East Media Research Institute, one of those places that needs money, just like I do presently. Just let everybody know I am in financial need at this point. If you want to support me, go to my blog, paulsutliff.blogspot.com. Buy some of my books. I'm at the point where I'm having a tough time. So if you can do that, I'd appreciate it. Going back to the topic. Virginia-based Imam Suleiman Jala. This is from the memory.org. This was published, I don't know exactly the date it was published. However, the date they give is June 22nd, 2018. But usually that's the date that the person makes the statement. Imam Suleiman Jala, who delivers sermons in English at several mosques in Washington, D.C. area, included Loudon Islamic Center in Leesburg, Virginia, the Dar al-Nur Mosque in Manassas, Virginia, and the Prince George's Muslim Association in Lanham, Maryland, said in a sermon that Islam was the only solution to solve America's problems. It would solve the world's problems, he said, but none of the Muslim countries could serve as an example of the implementation of Islam to solve life's problems. He further said that the U.S. has great potential and that he believes that it will be a Muslim nation and potentially one of the best Muslim nations that you will see in a long time. The sermon, titled The Source of Slavery, and Nazi laws. Like I said, lots of news this week. California man sentenced for plotting ISIS-inspired San Francisco attack. This is by Fox News, and it's written by Frank Miles, published August 6th. A Northern California tow truck driver who told undercover agents that he wanted to carry out an ISIS-inspired Christmas Day bombing on San Francisco's popular Pier 39 was sentenced to 15 years in prison. U.S. District Judge Lawrence J. O'Neill issued the sentence Monday, which came after Everett Aaron Jameson admitted under a plea deal in June that he tried to aid a terrorist organization. Wait a minute. He tried to aid a terrorist organization. That means he was aiding and abetting an enemy of the United States. We call that treason. Death. Well, why wasn't he charged with that? Weren't our people fighting the Islamic State? That's why this man should have been charged with treason. Weren't our soldiers over there fighting? Yet they find someone willing to support them, and they don't charge them with treason. That's insane. How about this one? Cory Booker, pictured with anti-Israeli radicals, holding signs calling for the elimination of security borders in Israel. This is the New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. Now, this was found as posted by Brent Scher on freebeacon.com. He has a couple pictures here. I definitely want to take a look at it. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker was pictured on Friday afternoon at the Liberal Netroots Nation Conference, holding a sign calling for the removal of security borders in Israel. Booker, standing next to the radical activists of the Campaign for Palestinian Rights, is holding a sign that says, "From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go," a slogan used by the group in its call for removal of Israeli security borders used to protect its citizens from terrorist attacks. I say go read this article. It's a little bit longer than I want to read right now. It is outstanding. This guy, Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker, has decided to basically make a statement saying, well, I didn't know what the sign said. Were you willing to pose with him? Yeah. Okay. Yes, he was. Was he trying to get a photo shoot in? Say, yes, Muslims will support me now. That's why he did it. This man has no morals. I would make sure I'd vote him out of office as soon as possible. If I was in New Jersey, I'd vote him out of office. I'd make sure I ran a campaign against him. But I don't live in New Jersey. U.S. seeks to end Palestinian refugee status and redirect UN aid. Now, this, to me, is one of the best things that's happening in the United States today. Now, this article came out August 6th, and there is a lot of news coming out on this topic. This one, oh, jeepers, I can't see where this came from, unfortunately. By World Israel News, I'm sorry. Bacha Jerenberg. The U.S. executive and legislative branches are considering ways to put an end to the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, which supports millions of Palestinian refugees and their, quote, descendants in the Middle East. In internal emails from January obtained by the Global magazine, Jared Kushner, U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, writes, it is important to have an honest and sincere effort to disrupt UNRWA. This agency perpetuates a status quo, is corrupt, inefficient, doesn't help peace. Yeah! Finally, someone's telling the truth about this organization. That's exciting. We need to do something to get the truth out. And number one, stop funding this albatross. I think it's possible. Besides, their definition of refugee is not our definition. To me, that's a problem that is huge. Wow. Okay. Now, this one is for Kel and my other Canadian friends out there. And another rant that will probably get me going. I have a friend from Canada who just wrote to me earlier today on LinkedIn, and she's disgusted by this article, which I shared this morning. It comes from the Toronto Sun. It's written by Michelle Mandel, and this article, it published August 7th, was updated August 8th. So I want to say thank you to her, and I want to say thank you to the Canadians who are out there and discussed it. So here's what has a lot of Canadians upset today. Mandel, mentally ill stabber in Army recruiting center attack allowed to attend Mohawk College. The mentally ill man, found not criminally responsible for trying to kill 3 soldiers in a Toronto recruiting center, will be allowed to attend Mohawk College across the street from the secure psychiatric unit where he's currently being detained. Whoa. Okay, are you willing for your child to go to the place across from the psychiatric center to go to school? Because they're willing for this man to go across the street and hopefully not kill them. While Ayan Hassan Ali will be supervised initially, so they're going to send some guards with him initially? Are we talking about people with guns, I hope? What does it mean initially? You're going to stop sending them if he doesn't kill people while the guards are there? The Ontario Review Board's plan is that he will eventually be allowed to attend classes on his own. Oh, my God. Is that safe for you? Is that safe for your children at Mohawk College? No. Absolutely not. They said he was incompetent. They're going to make sure he gets his drugs, right? Do you think he didn't do this because he believed in it? It's jihad. Insane. Insane. How about this one? This one has me a little surprised, and I've seen about 4 articles on that this week. This one comes from the Daily Mail. It's about Saudi Arabia and Canada. And it's by Khaleda Rahman and again, it was published August 6th. Saudi Arabia said it was expelling the Canadian ambassador and had recalled its envoy in protest at Ottawa's vigorous calls for the release of jailed women's rights activists. The Saudi Foreign Ministry also said it would freeze all new business between the Kingdom and Canada. Some 10% of Canadian crude oil imports come from Saudi Arabia. On Monday, the Kingdom gave the Canadian ambassador 24 hours to leave the country in an abrupt rupture of relations over what it slammed as interference in its internal affairs. The Canadian position is an overt and blatant interference in the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Foreign Ministry said in an extraordinary, aggressive statement posted on Twitter. The Kingdom announces that it is recalling its ambassador to Canada for consultation. We consider the Canadian ambassador to the Kingdom persona non grata and order him to leave within the next 24 hours. The ministry also announced the freezing of all new trade and investment transactions with Canada while retaining its right to take further action. It added any further step from the Canadian side in that direction will be considered as acknowledgement of our right to interfere in the Canadian domestic affairs. Canada and all other nations need to know they can't claim to be more concerned than the kingdom is over its own citizens. It wasn't immediately clear if Ambassador Dennis Horak was in the kingdom. Saudi Arabia said it would recall its ambassador to Canada as well. So, I have some questions here. Isn't Muslim-friendly Justin Trudeau, isn't this really out of water for him that he would meddle in someone? Well, let's remember, Justin Trudeau really doesn't know anything. He's like a child playing adult. And this is the guy that played dress up in India. He can't figure out what to do. This is insane. He doesn't know. He can't make a good decision for his life. How Canadians can keep him and not remove him is beyond my understanding when he's doing things like this. Who gave him those orders? It's probably Trudeau. Unbelievable. Now we're getting into Britain. British police. This is from Breitbart by Victoria Friedman. British police asked if Iraqi pedophile can date a 12-year-old. Is it culturally sensitive? A British police officer called a charity to ask if it was acceptable for an Iraqi man to date a 12-year-old girl because he wanted to be, quote, culturally sensitive when dealing with a suspected pedophile. An unnamed police detective called the charity Karma Nirvana, which tackles forced marriage and other forms of honor-based abuse, after he had arrested a 26-year-old Iraqi man who said that in his culture it was acceptable for him to be in a relationship with a child, according to the charity's call log seen by the Times. According to the call log, the policeman said, "The accused is stating that it is completely acceptable in my culture to be with a 12-year-old. The record added that the officer just wished to know if it is accepted in Iraqi culture to be with a 12-year-old girl. The charity advised that he deal with the Iraqi in the same way they would deal with any other suspected pedophile. Karma Nirvana said that this call showed the dangers of authorities filtering serious crimes through a, quote, cultural sensitivity lens for fear of being perceived as a racist. So let the pedophile go because it's normal for him. Isn't that what they're thinking about doing? Are you okay with this happening in your neighborhood? If you live in England, you want your police officers letting people go who will take your 12-year-old daughter and have sex with them? So he needs to re-educate the police force over there that a crime is a crime is a crime. There's no cultural sensitivity to it. Who cares who committed the crime? The idea is that they need to be arrested. They need to be held. This stuff just blows my mind. This stuff up. I wish you could. I wish we could make tons of this up. Oh, my God. But this stuff never stops. It never, ever stops. The news is every day. How about this one? Along the same lines. Muslim refugee dragged screaming rape victims to graveyard in UK city of sanctuary. Now, this is in Breitbart by Virginia Hale, August 8th. A Sudanese refugee has been sentenced to 16 years jail for rape and attempted rape after he lay in wait for victims before dragging them into a graveyard in Hull, which was named a city of sanctuary last year. Ishaq al-Nur raped one woman in a vicious attack in June last year, which Hull Crown Court heard caused his 17-year-old victim to attempt suicide before launching an almost identical assault in November on a mother in the same cemetery. The 21-year-old, who is believed to have entered Britain 3 years ago to seek asylum, thinks of himself as a peaceful man, a Muslim who prays and fasts and is not a bad person. But Judge Simon Jack said al-Nur posed a high risk to women after the court heard that he had engaged his victims in conversation late at night before dragging them off the pavement and into the Springbank Cemetery, where he then raped one of them and tried to rape the other. These were not chance encounters, said prosecutor John Thackeray, explaining that the defendant was deliberately waiting for them, waiting in that area for vulnerable females late at night with the intention to attack and rape. In the early hours of June 4 last year, Al-Noor approached the teenage victim as she was walking home from a party, reported the Hull Daily Mail. He was laughing and joking, the court heard. Then, without warning, he grabbed her by the neck and pulled her backwards into the cemetery. She tried to hold on to the railings, but without success. Despite her best efforts, she was unable to hold on, and he dragged her backwards into the cemetery, where he forced her to the ground and raped her, ignoring the teenager's cries of pains and pleading for him to stop. Describing the second attack, which took place in the early hours of November 16th, the prosecution said the woman was pulled across the road by Al-Noor, telling her she was crying and shouting, and he was covering her mouth as he dragged her into the same cemetery. The asylum seeker threw his victim to the ground and attempted to rape her, but she was able to free herself in the struggle while thinking of her children and shouting to him about her children. The first woman said she had tried to take her own life in the aftermath of the attack. Disclosing statement read to the court, when he assaulted me, he might as well have taken my future. I sensed my life, my security. He stomped on it. According to the Daily Mail, Al-Noor admitted guilty. Yes, I did that. Why not? He sees no wrong. This is sick. This is, again, it's Islamic culture. You can do this to non-Muslim women according to Sharia. If you doubt me, go read Reliance the Traveler. Go to an Islamic culture where women never report a rape, because to do so could mean that they would be raped multiple times. Because a woman's testimony is only worth half that of a man. And the penalties of reporting rape without having those other witnesses. Basically, you're going to be raped again and again. Another article by Breitbart. This is in France. Man defending his wife lynched by 6 youths in France. They don't say Muslim youths, but they are. A trio of 17-year-old youths, I guess by Chris Tomlinson, I should say. Trio of 17-year-old youths in the French department of Val d'Oise arrested early Tuesday morning after they lynched a man coming to the aid of his wife, who was also attacked by the group. The incident occurred sometime between the late night of Monday and early morning Tuesday, and saw the wife of the victim confront a group of 6 youths who were being loud and obnoxious in the street outside of the couple's home, La Parisienne reports. While confronting the drunken youths, the woman was said to have been met with a torrent of abusive language, and during the confrontation, one of the men dropped a glass bottle which shattered on the ground and then proceeded to attack the woman with it. The husband of the woman then attempted to come to her aid, and according to witnesses, was thrown on the ground, viciously beaten, being kicked repeatedly in the body and the head. Police arrived on the scene a short time later, arrested 3 members of the group of youths, while the man and his wife, both believed to be in their 30s, were taken to the hospital. The location of the attack, Val d'Oise, I think that's how you would say it, lies just north of the no-go, heavily migrant-populated suburbs of Saint-Denis, which often see incredibly brutal attacks and riots, including a 37-year-old man having his gold teeth ripped out by thieves in the area last month. I wish these realities, I wish they were not true. But they are. How about this one? Maybe I'm different. I don't like going over past attacks. But I will recommend that people go to France24.com and look at the happy Muslim terrorist, the happy one, who's smiling for his picture wearing a suicide vest before he committed the 2017 Barcelona attack. They see joy in killing. And where do these things come from? I'm telling people, read the Quran, read the Hadith, read the Sirah, read the Sunnah. I want you to look at it. The Hadith and the Sirah are the Sunnah. I'm sorry. You want to read this stuff. Why? Because you need to be able to defend yourself when these things are coming. You need to be able to say when those liberals come after you, have you read these things? Do you know that they are actually behind? They actually defend them? It's important. Some of this stuff just is sick. Again, that asylum seeker who raped a student in the UK the 2 people in the UK cemetery. Why not? Put that man away. Cut off his wee-wee. I don't see a better solution than cutting off his wee-wee. Oh, I'm sorry. Probably the best solution for him, because he sees nothing wrong with rape. Tunisian migrant planned biological weapon attack against unbelievers in Germany. Now, I've read this in a few different articles, but I like the one by Breitbart by Victoria Friedman. This was published August 4th. Tunisian migrant Saif Allah was 29, planned a deadline a terror attack against unbelievers, according to German prosecutors. He wanted to explode a ricin bomb packed with shrapnel in a busy indoor place, targeting unbelievers. The federal prosecutor's office said in what is believed to be Germany's first biological weapons terror attack. Authorities revealed further details about the Islamist plot on Friday after the Tunisian migrant was arrested following a raid on his apartment, Willer district of the West German city of Cologne. The suspect was charged with possession of weapons of war, planning a serious attack of violence against the state, and of membership with a terrorist organization, according to Deutschwelle. Police conducted the search in early of June and found toxic substances, which turned out to be the highly dangerous ricin, which is used in the manufacture of biological weapons. Saif's wife, a Muslim convert 13 years his senior, identified as Yasmin, was also arrested in late July. It is alleged the 42-year-old Yasmin, a German national, had arranged a trip for her husband to Poland to buy explosive materials. Officials claim she then allowed him to use her online accounts to order ingredients and components for the bomb, including thousands of castor seeds used to make ricin and the electric coffee grinder. The couple have 4 children. They bought a hamster for them of the poison. Nice gift for your children. You're going to kill their pet. Some of this stuff is just insane. Again, there's more sexual assault. Voice of Europe. These ones are hard for me. Afghan migrant. This is August 5th. Afghan migrant who sexually abused 7 children in Germany, released after only 7 months. An Afghan migrant who sexually abused at least 7 children in Germany is released after only 7 months in prison, the newspaper Ausberger Allgemeine reports. The man was sentenced for exposing himself to children in streetcars in the city of Augsburg. On tram lines, he sat down with girls as young as 10 and exposed his genitals while masturbating. Due to video recordings, the police officer was traveling privately, had recognized him in December 2017 and arrested him. Legal charges against him is sexual abuse of children. The recognized refugee was released after only 7 months in jail after an agreement between his defense lawyer. The refugee now gets a probation officer and a carrier at his side because, I think that means he has to wear one of those nice little bracelets, ankle bracelets. Disgusting. Going on and into August 8th. This is Sweden. New no-go zone police station rammed by car, attacked by masked arsonists, again by Chris Tomlinson. A new police station currently under construction in Sweden's heavily migrant-populated no-go suburb of Rinkeby was attacked by several masked men who drove a car into the site and set it on fire. Police believe the attack, which occurred at 1:30 a.m. on Tuesday, was directed at the police station, which is in the process of being built in the troubled Stockholm suburb. They claim the masked men involved smashed a gate with a car filled with fireworks, which they then proceeded to set on fire. Send the military in, take all the refugees in the area, and send them home, wherever their home is. You have to protect yourself. You have to protect yourself. Yes, Gary, you missed a lot. You're going to want to go back to the beginning of the show. Oh, wow. Okay, going on. How about this? Memory.org has a few more stories for us. Mauritanian cleric Dadao Shankti says this: on Judgment Day, the Muslims will kill the Jews, the brothers of apes and pigs. This was published, this guy said this stuff on July 28th. Mauritanian cleric Muhammad al-Hassan Old al-Dadao al-Shakti recounted the anti-Semitic hadith of the prophecy of the rock and the tree and said that on Judgment Day, the Jews from all over the land will gather around the Antichrist and Muslims will kill them. Al-Shankti, a member of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, which is a Muslim Brotherhood institute, concluded that is when the ultimate defeat of the brothers of apes and pigs will take place. And after that, nothing will remain of the Palestinian Al-Quds TV channel. Amazing. Gaza University, Professor Abdul Sami Al-Arbid on Hamas TV. Now, this guy said this on July 19, 2018, by memory again. Abdul Sami Al-Arbid said, the Jews are behind every conspiracy. This is what Allah told us through the Quranic verses. You may notice that over a third of the Quran talks about the Israelites, not merely to provide information, but to warn us and to teach us how to deal with this human garbage. They are the ones who incited the Arab tribes against the Prophet Muhammad. This anti-Semitism of Muslims is not a surprise. We expect it. But, again, we need to recognize this is on Hamas TV. Well, we're nearing the end, and I do want to tell you, if you didn't know, Bin Laden's son got married. He married the daughter of the lead 9/11 hijacker. Hamza bin Laden, the late son of the late Al-Qaeda leader, married the daughter of Muhammad Atta. And this was verified this week. There's an article out in The Guardian, and it's by Martin Chulov. It was published August 5th. When I talked last week about an interview that was done of his mother. And in that meeting, she verified that her son had recently been married to Muhammad Atta's daughter. Sick. Now, this is an article. There's an article out there again. I love memory.org. I'll tell people go to that site all the time. And there's tons more, and I am fortunately not going to get all the news this week. But I do want to tell you, first of all, that there are some other great news, great sources out there with Global Patriot Radio. There are other shows, and I want to talk about that because you need to stay informed. Global Patriot Radio is going to do everything they can to keep you informed. Now, tomorrow we have Dr. Carl Goldberg, and I believe he will also be talking about some of the things I did today, but he'll do it in a much better in-depth manner than because the stuff I'm talking about he will cover is one of the first news articles that I covered today. Dr. Carl Goldberg covers the logic of Islam, and he has a morning show. Saturday evening, late night, we have Usama Dakdok. He's a Christian evangelist, and he reaches out to Muslims around the world and gets in debates with people and has really deep discussions. And if you want to learn from him, I can't recommend very many higher than I can recommend him. On Sunday, we have Erica Kafiristan. You've got to come listen to that man. He makes what could seem confusing simple. Come take a listen. And he's on, I believe, early afternoon. Then come back on Monday. The Real Radio Men, Al and Vito will be there with Mamma Mia No Sharia, and that's at 6 on Monday. And then come back again on Tuesday, and you will listen to the beautiful Cal Fritzy with Infidels Are Watching. And I will be back here. The forum is on Wednesday, and I will be back here on Thursday. And I have a guest for you that will blow your mind next week. It's a surprise. Let me tell you, you want to be there next week. This person I had said before I was going to try and get him. I did. It's a surprise. You definitely want to listen to this. Come back next week. You're going to be surprised. I want to thank you all for listening. This show, I'd love to hear your comments about what I was talking about earlier about radicalization. If you would like to reply to me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any one of those venues, please do. I'm really, we might have a whole new host for Wednesdays, Cal is telling us. That sounds exciting. Definitely. That's good. And Cal will probably lead the way in helping them get used to things because she did that for me. Oh, my gosh. There's so much going out there. I wish Islam would not be the gift that keeps on giving. I really do. But these things continue to be in the news. These attacks, these terrorist attacks, these sexual attacks upon our people. Our peoples of the world, I should say, peoples of the world, because it's not just on Christians and Jews. It's not just on Europeans. There's so much happening around the world that isn't even published in a form that I can read, which, again, I'm reading English. I'm sure it's in many other languages. We're doing the best we can to get the news out to you, and we're only touching the tip of the iceberg. I want to thank you for listening and say God bless you and God bless the USA.